Okay, so one of the biggest takeaways from this week's sets of questions is please pay attention to where I say the answers are, because the chapters are extremely wonky. Okay, so for example, our first one here in chapter 17, Maddie sees her dead wagons and abandoned houses. What theme about the fragility of society and how things can quickly fall apart is suggested here? It's not in chapter 17, it's in chapter 16. Pretty much anything that's describing abandoned houses or the city of Philadelphia or what has happened to the people, we really get a picture of in chapter 16. Now, that's not to say that we don't have the idea of it in chapter 17 through 19, really. We do, but it's really shown in chapter 16. And fragility just means fragile, easily broken, or damaged. Now, in chapter, not 18, 17, Maddie and grandfather return to the coffee house. There's 3 specific things they find that show the conflict of the looters has added to the conflict of the fever. Now, here, you have a bunch of things that I listed for you that got looted. This is on chapter 17, page 55. I pretty much copied most of the page and just put it here. A bunch of things get stolen. Luckily, they don't go upstairs. They just rob the coffee house, but still, they still got robbed. Now, also, more looters come back in chapter 19, so keep that in mind. They take things then too. You could probably talk about that as well. And I think chapter 19 really adds more to the conflict because you feel it. You really feel it in chapter 19. Maddie really feels it in chapter 19. She's frustrated in chapter 17. She's scared in chapter 19. So in chapters not 16, chapter 15, here's the clerk's just a jerk, and there's a lot of stuff with the clerk. I've copied most of it here, okay? But bottom of page 50, really all the way, it might be 51. I might have messed up here. I don't want to go back, but point is somewhere between 50 and 52, and it's just everything with the clerk. And here it is. He's so much different than Mrs. Flagg, right? How is he different than Mrs. Flagg? Now, in chapter 17, I believe this is actually chapter 16. Yeah, this is chapter 16. This is chapter 16. Sorry about that. Chapter 16, pages 53 through 54. There's a woman on there. There's a girl on there. The guy driving the carriage. All these people say all of these crazy, not crazy, but like horrific things that are going on in the city. One of which is like this person that gets thrown out because he has the fever and the family didn't want to catch it. I mean, that's awful. Like, right, how does their hopeless way of speaking contribute to the mood of the chapter? Just think about it, right? So tell me, how does their way of speaking contribute to the mood? And then tell me what you think the mood is. Okay, identify the sensory imagery, sight and smell used to describe the city in chapter 16. Let's just say chapter 16 again here. So this should be chapter 16. Sorry about that, guys. Chapter 16. Okay, now this to me was the biggest thing that really spoke about the imagery, right? So it was night in the middle of the day. Heat from the brick houses filled the street like a bake oven. Clouds shielded the sun. Colors were overshot with gray. I'm just getting all of these pictures, right? No one was about. Businesses were closed and houses shuttered. I could hear a woman weeping. Some houses were barred against intruders. Yellow rags fluttered from rain. All of this imagery, really rich imagery, right? So what kind of gloomy tone do these details create? How does the first person point of view in chapter 17 help the reader feel Maddie's shock when she first walks into the trash coffee house? So she walks into the coffee house, regardless of why chapter 17. Regardless, why is it important that we are reading from Maddie's perspective instead of a narrator? Why is it important that she's walking to this coffee house? So there's a couple things, right, to think about. One, it's her coffee house, so it means more to her. Like, I could have walked into the coffee house from first person point of view and be like, oh man, this place got wrecked. But it doesn't really mean anything to me. Both of us will have that perspective of actually explaining how something got destroyed or wrecked or what have you. But then she also adds in her perspective of, this is my coffee house, right? Whereas the narrator, if I walked in there, like I said, it would just be like, oh, this is bad. It was things were torn up, blah, blah, things were missing, blah, blah. Okay, moving on. Really no emotion in there, where she's going to have the emotion of actually going in there. Describe the setting of Philadelphia in chapter 16. Now, I will say this is more described in the carriage ride in chapter 16. However, we do learn about how empty the streets are. Plus, we learn about the looting going on in later chapters. So you do get the emptiness of the streets, which allows for looting and so on and so forth. but it's really in chapter 16. Like a lot, like I said, all the things with the description. And you can just go back up here to where I copied and pasted it, or like go back to that in the text, okay? Where's it? Oh, that setting. Read the historical quote. This is literally just the quote, right? I cannot anticipate nor limit the period when the devastation and horror too long experienced in this miserable place will have an end. Think about how the destitute, poor, and homeless. How does this factual information match the characters Maddie sees on her way back to the city? So again, think about this and how it is supported by everything you read about when Maddie and her grandfather were riding in the carriage. So yes, this quote is in chapter 17. However, it's the things coming before that in chapter 16. I really think about the boy on, like, they just got thrown out of his house, yellow rags all over the city, littering everyone's houses. And okay, I know you're not ready for this, but first time in 19 chapters, or however many of these we've done, where the figurative language is actually in the text. But, and this is where you have to laugh, it's not in chapter 18. It's in chapter 17. But at least it's there, right? And so he tried to lift his sword. Sorry, the kitchen was a battlefield. Now, this isn't a direct metaphor. It's what we call an extended metaphor. If we haven't talked about extended metaphors before, if you've never heard of extended metaphor, an extended metaphor is something that can begin earlier on in the chapter, earlier on in the page, earlier on in a paragraph, earlier on in a poem, whatever, in a stanza of a poem. And then the comparison comes later. And so here, right, he tried to lift his sword and scabbard to its place over the mantle, but his arm shook too badly. I set Silas down and took the sword from him. Let me help you, I said. I raised the sword to its resting place. Thank you, my sweet grandfather said. Don't know what's come over me. I know, I said firmly. We've just come through a battle and you need time to recuperate. And so the battle, they had left the kitchen, but the battle was in the kitchen, right? That's why it's an extended metaphor. Anyways, point being, I gave you what type of figurative language it is if you didn't already know. But I'm just so excited, so excited that it's actually in the text. Now, I found a couple of chapters for you. Chapter 19 for this one, chapter 17 through 19 for this one, chapter 18 for this one. And then she actually was hitting it home. All of this was where it was supposed to be. Okay, so you just do your best with the RTQTs. You're showing me if you're watching my videos too, because again, I'm showing you where everything is, trying to make things go faster, trying to make things easier for you, but also like with the people that are like, what, these are RTQTs? How many of, well, goodness gracious, how many of these have we done? Like, you know this by now. These are our RTQTs. All right. I did it twice. I'm not doing it a third time. Okay. Down with the vocabulary. Same thing that we've been doing here, right? In chapter 16, the clerk is relentless with his questions. He keeps asking questions. Based on how he keeps asking Maddie things over and over, what does relentless mean? The city is described as a sepulcher, using the context of the dead wagons and abandoned houses nearby. What does this word mean? You're just making your best educated guess based on the context clues. A lot of you are skipping these, or maybe just not reading the whole thing. The author describes the city as silent in chapter 17. Describe the nuances between silent, quiet, and hushed. This is a three-parter, right? Which one sounds more eerie or scary in the context of a plague? To me, right? What are the three differences? I can tell you which one I think sounds the most eerie. Okay, thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions, let me know. Hopefully we were able to get this started on Monday, and then moving into Tuesday and Wednesday, we have less of these to do and can have some free time like last week. All right, bye everybody. Thank you.